The vast chamber of the Galactic Tribunal was unlike anything a human courtroom would recognize. It was a massive, circular arena suspended in the void of space, orbiting the neutral planet Velsura 5. The domed ceiling shimmered with a projection of the galaxy, stars twinkling like silent witnesses to the proceedings. The walls pulsed with an iridescent glow, reacting to the emotions of those present. At the center, seated in a reinforced chair designed to hold species of various physiologies, sat Commander Elias Voss, humanity's chosen representative. Unlike the others in the tribunal, who came adorned in ceremonial robes, exoskeletal armor, or flowing bioluminescent veils, Voss wore a simple dark blue military uniform, marked only by the insignia of Earth's United Stellar Forces. He was the only human in the chamber, and all eyes were on him. Across from him, an elevated podium, stood Warlord Kizarath of the Threxian Dominion. His species, towering reptilian warriors clad in gleaming black armor, were known for their brutal conquests and unwavering battle prowess. His yellow eyes gleamed with barely restrained contempt as he gestured toward the holographic display above them. Projected for all to see was a terrifying collection of war records, battle footage, and classified intelligence. It showed humans fighting, surviving, and winning against forces that should have crushed them. A battle where an outnumbered human fleet held the line against a superior enemy, refusing to break. A ground war where human soldiers fought with relentless ferocity, using every advantage, terrain, weather, even their own injuries, as weapons. Scenes of lone survivors crawling out of devastation, bloodied but still breathing, still fighting. The room buzzed with murmurs, telepathic whispers, and shifting energy fields as the assembled alien representatives processed the data. The Elithii, a tall, translucent species that communicated through psychic resonance, vibrated with discomfort. The Voran delegation, cybernetic beings with vast intelligence, exchanged rapid bursts of encrypted data, recalculating their strategic assessments. Even the Zalari, a species of sentient mist that rarely reacted to anything, stirred within their containment fields. Finally, Kizrath spoke, his voice a deep growl that resonated through the chamber. The evidence is undeniable. Of all the species in this galaxy, none are as unnatural as you, human. His claws tapped against the podium. You should not be able to do what you do. Your species is weak. Your technology is unremarkable. Your physiology is inferior to nearly every warrior race. And yet you win. He turned his piercing gaze on Voss. What makes you so lethal? The murmurs ceased. The chamber fell into a heavy silence. Every being present, some from civilizations that had existed for millennia before humanity had even discovered fire, waited for the answer. Voss exhaled slowly. He had expected this question. Humanity's reputation had spread far beyond its small corner of space. The stories of resilience, of impossible victories, of terrifying ingenuity had reached even the most distant worlds. And now, the galaxy wanted an explanation. He leaned forward slightly, his expression calm, measured. It's not what we have, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. It's what we are. Kazarath's eyes narrowed. Elaborate. Voss smiled faintly. You look at us and see what's missing. We're not the strongest, not the fastest. We lack claws, venom, natural armor. We don't have telepathy, energy-based physiology, or a genetic memory. We aren't even the smartest species here. He gestured to the Voran scientist, who bristled at the implication. But you're all asking the wrong question. It's not about what we lack. It's about what we do with what we have. He glanced at the shifting holograms above them. Every species here has evolved to fit into an ecosystem. Some of you are apex predators. Others are hive minds. Some rely on technology to protect your fragile bodies. But humans, he paused. We weren't given a place. We carved one out. The Elithii emissary stirred. Are you suggesting that your strength comes not from natural selection, but from defying it? Voss inclined his head. Precisely. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. The concept was unsettling. Most species accepted their evolutionary paths as fate. But humans? They had rejected theirs. Khazirath growled, "You speak in riddles, human. Enough philosophy. Give us a real answer." Voss nodded. He placed his hands on the table before him, fingers interlocked. His next words were delivered not as a boast, not as a threat, but as a simple, undeniable truth. "We are lethal because we refuse to die." Silence. For the first time, the Galactic Tribunal, the most powerful beings in the known universe, was speechless. The silence in the tribunal chamber stretched long after Commander Voss spoke. The alien delegates shifted uneasily, their discomfort evident in the flickering of their bioluminescence, the shuffling of armored feet, and the static hum of cybernetic implants adjusting to process new data. The idea that a species' greatest strength was its refusal to die, its sheer persistence, was unsettling. Warlord Khazirath's clawed fingers curled into a fist. He was a warrior, a conqueror, a being who had earned his dominance through raw power. And yet, here sat a creature who claimed that power alone did not make one the deadliest force in the galaxy. He growled lowly. "Explain." Voss nodded, as if he had expected the challenge. "Very well. Let's start with the basics. Our biology." A wave of dismissive murmurs passed through the chamber. The Voran scientist, a sleek, insectoid being with a crown of cybernetic implants, clicked his mandibles. "Your biology? Commander Voss, your species is physically unremarkable. You lack exoskeletal armor, regenerative abilities, even the ability to survive in vacuum. What possible advantage does your biology provide?" Voss leaned back slightly. "You assume that power is defined by individual capability. That's your first mistake." He gestured to the holographic interface at the center of the chamber. "Computer, display comparative endurance data." The hologram flickered, shifting to show a series of charts and recordings. They displayed various species running, hunting, engaging in prolonged exertion. Some are faster than humans, some stronger, some could lift objects that would crush a human instantly. But only one species kept going. The display shifted to footage from an Earth-based experiment, one showcasing persistence hunting. It showed humans tracking prey across vast distances, running for hours, even days, without stopping. The prey, stronger, faster animals, collapsed from exhaustion long before the humans did. Voss gestured toward the footage. Most predators in the galaxy rely on brute strength, speed, or ambush tactics. But humans? We're the only species that can run down our prey until it simply can't move anymore. We don't have to be the strongest. We just have to last longer. The Voran scientist's compound eyes flickered with analytical curiosity. Your species possesses exceptional endurance. Fascinating, but not unique. Voss smiled. You're right. Other species have stamina, but not like us. He held up a hand. Do you know what this is? The Threxian warlord scoffed. A hand. A weak, clawless, unimpressive appendage. Voss flexed his fingers. This is the most advanced tool in the galaxy. We don't have claws or talons. But what we do have is fine motor control, the ability to manipulate objects with an unmatched level of precision. Every weapon, every piece of technology we've built, every strategy we execute, our hands make it possible. The hologram shifted again, displaying footage of human soldiers assembling and disassembling weapons in complete darkness, of surgeons performing intricate operations, of engineers constructing machines with microscopic precision. The Elithii emissary, who had remained silent until now, hummed in thought. Dexterity and endurance, an unusual combination. Voss nodded. It doesn't stop there. Humans have another advantage, one you might not expect. The display changed once more, now showing slowed-down combat footage. Two humans engaged in a fight, reading each other's movements, reacting in fractions of a second. We are exceptional at reading micro-expressions. The Voran scientist tilted his head. Micro-expressions? Voss tapped his temple. Tiny, involuntary facial movements. They reveal intent before an action is taken. We can predict movements, emotions, even deception before they happen. This is why we can anticipate enemy attacks, why we can manipulate social interactions, and why we excel at psychological warfare. The murmurs in the tribunal grew louder. Some species, like the Elithii, relied on telepathic communication to understand others. But humans did it instinctively, no telepathy required. Khazarath bared his fangs. You are telling me that humans' greatest strengths are endurance, dexterity, and an ability to read emotions? Hardly the qualities of a true predator. Voss chuckled. You still don't get it. He leaned forward. Individually, none of these things seem overwhelming. But combined, they make us something terrifying. The hologram flickered once more, now showing war footage. Not just of human soldiers, but of civilians, of survivors, of medics dragging the wounded off battlefields under fire. It showed soldiers fighting with broken limbs, pilots crash landing and still returning to battle, entire squads holding the line against impossible odds. Voss's voice was quiet but firm. We aren't the best at anything. We aren't the strongest, the smartest, or the fastest. But we don't stop. We don't break. We endure, we adapt, and we outlast. And that makes us the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The Voran scientist, who had mocked human biology moments before, now stared at the footage in stunned silence. The Elithii emissary whispered, barely audible. A species that never stops. Voss smiled grimly. Now you're starting to understand. The tribunal chamber was silent again, but this time, it was not due to disbelief. It was something else. Unease. A creeping realization that the human before them was not boasting. He was merely stating facts. Warlord Khazarath exhaled through his nostrils, his claws flexing against the podium. Endurance, dexterity, and perceptiveness. I will concede that your species is more capable than it appears. But these traits do not explain your lethality in war. Many species are powerful, yet they do not spread like wildfire across the stars. Voss nodded, as if expecting this rebuttal. He glanced around the chamber, meeting the eyes, where applicable, of each species. You're right. Biology alone doesn't make us lethal. What truly sets us apart is how we think. The Voran scientist tilted his head. Explain. Voss stood from his chair and began pacing slowly. Most of you come from civilizations that developed within rigid systems. The Threxians follow a warrior hierarchy. Strength dictates leadership. The Vorans trust logic and cold calculation. The Elithii function as a collective consciousness, relying on unity over individuality. Each of you has a predictable pattern, a way your species engages with war and survival. Humans, he stopped, his gaze sharp. We don't have patterns. We adapt. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Elithii emissary, their translucent form shimmering in contemplation, spoke. Adaptation is not unique. All successful species evolve to fit their environments. Voss nodded. Evolving to fit an environment is one thing. Changing the environment to fit you? That's something else entirely. With a flick of his wrist, he signaled the holographic display. It shifted to a series of battles, some fought on Earth, others in deep space. It showed humans turning disadvantage into opportunity. A fleet cornered against a black hole, using the gravitational field to slingshot themselves to safety. A ground war where outnumbered human forces used the terrain, mud, fog, even their own wounded, to turn the tide of battle. A last stand where human soldiers, cut off from reinforcements, dug in for months, surviving on sheer willpower alone. You don't understand war the way we do, Voss continued. To you, war is about overwhelming strength, strategic precision, or numerical superiority. To us, war is chaos. It is suffering, and we don't just survive it, we embrace it. The Threxian warlord narrowed his reptilian eyes. You embrace suffering? Voss gave a grim smile. Pain teaches. Fear sharpens. Loss hardens. No other species in this chamber has experienced war like we have. We fight not just when we have the advantage, but when we have nothing, when everything is against us. And that is when we are at our most dangerous. The hologram shifted again, displaying psychological reports. It compared how various species handled stress, pain, and loss. Many species broke under extreme pressure, retreating or surrendering when hope seemed lost. Humans, however, exhibited something different, the ability to push beyond their limits. The Voran scientist read the data, his mandibles twitching. Your species has an abnormally high capacity for pain tolerance, both physically and emotionally. The ability to continue fighting despite overwhelming odds is statistically improbable. Voss nodded. Improbable, but undeniable. Humans don't quit. When we lose, we learn. When we fall, we rise again. We do not accept defeat unless we are utterly annihilated. And even then, our ideas, our legacy, our will live on. The HFY emissary's form flickered with uncertainty. You turned death into a lesson. Voss turned to face them directly. We turned death into motivation. A heavy silence fell over the tribunal. No species had ever spoken of war in such terms. Not as an unfortunate necessity, not as a means to an end, but as an opportunity to grow stronger. Warlord Kizarath, ever the skeptic, let out a low snarl. You speak of adaptation and resilience, but I see another trait at play here: deception. Your kind is known for dishonesty, for manipulation. You do not simply fight your enemies. You break them from within. Your psychological warfare is unmatched, is it not? Voss didn't deny it. You misunderstand. It's not about dishonesty. It's about unpredictability. We use every tool available to us. Misdirection, misinformation, psychological pressure. The mind is the greatest battlefield. And humans? We are masters of it. The hologram now displayed instances of human warfare where battles were won without a single shot fired, where fear, misinformation, and psychological tactics forced enemies to surrender before the fighting even began. The Voran scientist chittered in quiet horror. You manipulate even your own survival as a strategy? Voss's voice was cold. Survival is a game we refuse to lose. The chamber felt heavier now, the delegates shifting, glancing at one another with wary expressions. It was one thing to fight an enemy with superior weapons or strength. It was another to fight one that refused to break, that used every weakness against you, that never stopped coming. Kazarath exhaled sharply, his fangs bared. You truly believe yourselves to be the deadliest force in this galaxy. Voss held his gaze. We don't have to believe it. You already do. The Threxian said nothing. And that, Voss knew, was the most telling answer of all. The tribunal chamber was no longer filled with skepticism. The murmurs of doubt had been replaced with something else: unease. Every species present had come, seeking an explanation for humanity's lethality. They had expected some trick, some hidden advantage, some unknown technology. Instead, they had found something far worse. Humans were not deadly because of superior weapons, biology, or sheer numbers. They were deadly because of what they were: creatures that refused to die, that embraced war as a puzzle to be solved, that turned even their own suffering into a weapon. But there was one question left unanswered. It was the HFY emissary who finally spoke, their translucent form shifting like a living current. There's a consequence to everything. No species can wage war without cost. What is yours? Voss exhaled slowly. He had been waiting for this question. Our cost is everything. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Even Warlord Kizarath, who had spent the entire discussion challenging humanity's nature, narrowed his reptilian eyes. The Voran scientist chittered in curiosity. Elaborate. Voss turned to the holographic display, gesturing for the computer to bring up the next set of visuals. It was not war footage this time. Not battles, not tactics, not victories. Instead, it showed something else entirely. A human soldier, sitting alone in a dimly lit room, his hands trembling as he stared at them. A field medic covered in blood. Not their own, slumped against a wall, expression hollow. A mother standing at a gravesite, clutching a folded flag. Voss let the images linger before speaking. We don't fight without consequence. Every war, every battle, every act of survival, it takes something from us. The HFY emissary's form flickered. Suffering is universal. But you claim your species thrives in war. Voss nodded grimly. We do, but that doesn't mean we come out whole. The display changed again, showing statistics, rates of psychological trauma, the impact of war on human civilization, the cultural scars left by endless conflict. Even in victory, the wounds remained. You ask what makes us so lethal? It's not just our endurance, our adaptability, or our strategy. It's that we are willing to pay the price. The Voran scientist's glowing eyes flickered. You accept this suffering? Willingly. Voss's expression hardened. We don't just accept it. We carry it. We live with it. And sometimes we never recover from it. Silence. The weight of his words settled over the tribunal like a suffocating fog. It was easy to fear a species that could win wars, but a species that knew the cost, bore the pain, and still fought anyway? That was something else entirely. Warlord Kizarath, ever the warrior, finally spoke, his tone quieter than before. And yet, you keep fighting. Voss met his gaze. Because we have to. The Phyrexian warlord studied him for a long moment before letting out a deep, guttural sound, something between a growl and a sigh. I came here today to understand what makes your species dangerous. I thought it would be strength, or strategy, or technology. He shook his head. But now I see the truth. He leaned forward, eyes glowing with something new. Not anger, not disdain, but respect. You're lethal not because you seek war, but because you refuse to lose it. Voss didn't respond immediately. He simply held the warlord's gaze before nodding once. The tribunal chamber was silent again, but this time it was not the silence of disbelief. It was the silence of understanding, and perhaps the silence of fear.